You talked about it being miraculous and miraculous because of the sense that it was incredibly hard. I mean, keep in mind, we're talking about fielding armies that are all the way on the other side of the world and not really doing so with state backing per se. They're doing so as part of this popular movement. So it's not like you've got, and certainly there were sponsorships, but it wasn't like the King of England or the King of the Franks have sent you all of this, their entire army over. It was this sort of like quasi volunteer thing. So walk me through what that was like.
Yeah, it really, I really want to emphasize there was almost nothing like this in the history of the world. So first of all, like I said, no centralized planning. This was literally the extent to which some of it was planned. The Pope and a few other guys say, hey, let's meet at Constantinople on this day about 2 years from now. And so you have guys they're all walking there pretty much. So you have guys who are walking from Italy, guys who are walking from France, guys who are walking from Germany, some guys who cross the channel from England. They're coming from all over. And the enthusiasm is so great. They're actually putting out notices. For example, a lot of Spaniards want to join, but they're fighting Muslims in Spain. And they're saying, guys, we need you to be fighting the infidel in Spain. There's a lot of warfare. It would not work if all the knights left there. We'd lose. Please don't. You guys, the Pope puts out a thing where he says, any remission of sins, any kind of spiritual good you get doing it there in Spain, you get it equal to the guys who go to Jerusalem. It's okay. And so, but then on top of the knights, you have ordinary people, tens of thousands of ordinary people are joining in on this, non-combatants. And so you end up with these people who end up in Constantinople, and it's a ton of ordinary people, ordinary men and women, and they have an incredibly hard time of it. Like, we'll just be objective. A lot of them go and they cross into Anatolia, that's modern day Turkey, before the knights do, and they get there and there's Muslim armies there, and a lot of them get massacred. It's a very ugly and hard thing, but some of them stick it out. They attach themselves to the army, and it's an army so big you can't afford to have it go just sail to the Holy Land. They have to walk there. They have to walk there across Anatolia, which is this rugged highland type of place. I'm trying to think of what a comparison in America would be. A lot of it is probably like walking across like northern Arizona, actually. There's trees, there's a few rivers, but it's very hot and it's a very tough place. And then you have all these Muslim armies. And what are the Muslim armies in this period? It's horse archers on horseback. So they ride and they shoot a bunch of arrows at you, and then they ride away and you can't really catch them. And it's just awful. So they walk all the way across Anatolia doing this, and anytime you get to a battle, you have to besiege it. And you think of Lord of the Rings, like, oh, okay, you walk up, you siege, and it's a thing that's over in a day. No, you have to sit outside this city for months, and they have food usually. They have water stockpiled, and you usually don't. So trying to take a city is worse than actually being inside of it. And they have to do this repeatedly, over and over. And the only advantage they have is a ton of enthusiasm. What stands out is they'll fight these battles where if you listen to a historian, he'll just say, yeah, this battle doesn't make any sense to fight. And the only advantage the Christians have is they're so gung-ho that they will fight to the death. They will go all out. And we just have battles where they're outnumbered 5-1, 10-1, and they'll just win. And they do have one big advantage, which is this is the period where knights on horseback are like a super weapon. Like a guy who's on armor on a horse. It's like a battle tank. And they're just able to plow through guys left and right if they're able to hit them. But they fight battle after battle. They have no unified command. They often don't have water. There's people who abandon it. There's an incredible story where one of the chief lords in the campaign, Stephen of Blois is his name, Blois, and he gives up. He despairs, and he runs away, and he runs into actually an army of the Roman emperor who says he wants to help, and he says, it's too late. We've already been overrun. Everyone died. Just turn back. And the emperor shrugs, and he's like, okay, I'll turn around. And then it turns out Stephen of Blois was wrong, that they'd won the battle he thought they were doomed in. And they truly thought this was a miraculous endeavor from beginning to end, that it never should have succeeded except for the grace of God.
And so talk to me a little bit more about these types of battles. So you mentioned cavalry, and they're sort of like these tanks, especially with armor that's able to stand up to arrows, but they're not. They're what if you're just like you're a typical infantry? What about the perspective of like a grunt?
Being a grunt was terrible, and in the crusading areas especially, they didn't have that many of them. If you're back in France, yeah, you can raise some peasants who hold spears, but going to the Middle East is really expensive. So other than the first crusade where you have that rabble of ordinary people tagging along, most of the people who do the fighting they're pretty professional about it. So they'll have armor, they'll often have horses. You'll have battles where a pretty high share of the Crusader army is mounted. But it's some of what you have. After the First Crusade, we have what's called the Crusader states, and it's this kind of little European state that's trying to cling on to Jerusalem, and it's surrounded by hostile enemies. And there's some absolutely wild battles. I think, if you've ever seen the movie Kingdom of Heaven, there's the leper king who hides behind his mask because he's deformed. And they mention in this movie that there's a battle where he fought Saladin, the great Islamic warrior. And I think the name of the battle is the Battle of Montgisard, I think is the name of it. And it's a battle where this Crusader army of maybe 2,000 men runs into a Saladin army of about 20,000 men, outnumbered 10 to 1, like I said. But every single guy in the Crusader army is a knight on a horseback, and the Muslim army is on foot. And they just look at him and they think, yeah, those odds seem great, let's go. And they just charge into him, outnumbered 10 to 1. And they don't just win, they totally annihilate the Muslim army. Like Saladin himself is almost captured and killed. That's what it's like if you're a guy on foot, if you're out of position, and you get hit by a European knight in this time. It's just like getting hit by a tank crossed with a steamroller.
By the way, I don't know if you know that King Baldwin of Jerusalem the fourth, and that scene of him from the movie where he's sort of raising his hand and saying stop. That is like this huge TikTok meme now that Gen Z are like constantly spreading. And for it's just this total and utter rebuke, but a bunch of like the traditional conservative Catholic or Orthodox believers have now taken Baldwin to be like a big avatar for them, and so you see this huge Gen Z direct implication, and different from so there's the Millennial Crusader meme, and we all know that one. That's the one where it's the Crusader Knight and Dave's Volt, and oh look at the time, it's Dave's Volt o'clock. That's sort of the Millennial Crusader meme, but the new Gen Z Crusader meme is all based around Baldwin and all based around it started with him just saying silence, but it's definitely branched out into more deeper territories, and it's just incredible that we have this. I think there's something about the time of the Crusades that resonates with us even today because of what you're saying, because this core essence of what the crusade really was just something that was completely unique throughout history, where people from Europe and Christians decided to get up and defend the faith, and it truly was a substantive and forceful defense of that faith in a way that you really don't ever see today.